I didn't know whether or not I was crying because I was too afraid or too fat. Hey y'all, today I would like to share a story with you. So it's called a story time. So in this particular situation, this was my first time flying, and I was about, I don't know, 20? I don't know. It was a while ago. I think I was like 22 years old. And I'd always wanted to fly, but I just never built up the courage to do it before then. Well, as I've stated numerous times, I've been overweight, obese, fat, whatever you want to call me, or still want to call me, for the majority of my life. And I knew nothing about flying. Let's just be clear. I knew absolutely nothing about flying. And I was going to Chicago with a friend for a family reunion. I was going with her and her family. And, you know, I was like one of the family to them. So I thought I would be okay. That was until the day actually came and the time actually came to get on the plane. I didn't know how to feel. I was just very nervous, extremely nervous. I was more so nervous at that point because I was too afraid. I'd never done it before, never flown before. But then when it came time to get on the plane and I saw those seats, I was nervous because I was thinking I was too damn fat. I'm not gonna lie. I'm extremely bottom heavy. At this point, I've lost over 100 pounds. I believe at last weight it was like 107, something like that. But then I was, you know, I wasn't at my heaviest, but I wasn't far from it. I was probably like 25 or 30 pounds lighter than my heaviest. So around this time I was like 280, 285 pounds. Still very big and very hippie, very wide. And for those of you who have flown, we all know that airplane seats are not wide. They are not accommodating, especially in economy, sorry. They are extremely not accommodating for the wider people in economy. But that's how we flew, economy. So I was okay, you know, because at this point the plane hadn't taken off or anything. I was fine. I was nervous, but I was fine. But when it came time to sit in the seats, I just visually, I knew like there was going to be a problem. And I'm not gonna say there was, but it was really uncomfortable. I got in the seat and the plane seat was so tight because I got a middle seat. It was my friend's little sister, me, and then my friend, and then her mom across the aisle. I was squished into that seat. Like when I sat down, I felt my thighs like rub up against the side of the arm rails, whatever you want to call them. Extremely uncomfortable, but you know, I'm dealing with it. And then it came time to fasten the seatbelt. Now, luckily at this point, and surprisingly at this point, I have never needed a seatbelt extender. At that time, I didn't even know what an extender was, but I have never needed one. But I think there would have recently been a time where I would have, but I'll get to that in a moment. So back to my first, flight. I'm squished into the seat. I'm already nervous because I don't know what to expect. I'm calm, but I'm nervous, and the plane starts rolling, and so we're just, on the tarmac, we're just rolling through, and the nerves are really kicking in at this point. Like, I'm really feeling it at this point. But what was taken away from how afraid I was how big and uncomfortable I was. I felt so cramped and compact in that seat that I thought, as crazy as it sounds, I thought I was gonna explode over into their seats, my friend and her sister's seat. It was just horrible. Then the plane speeds up. Y'all, when I tell y'all this was the scaredest I'd ever been in my life, the most afraid I'd ever been in my entire life. I did not want to cry. I did not want to scream, and I didn't know how I was gonna stop it because it was coming. It was coming, and it came. And once we took off, the takeoff scared me half to death. Like, I was so afraid of that takeoff that I did not. Oh Lordy. Ugh. Give me a moment. Having a flashback. Like, it was very nerve-wracking. But like I said, it was nerve-wracking for multiple reasons. Because one, I was extremely overweight, and airplanes are not made for wide people. They just aren't. Or should I say, economy seating is not made for wide people. Which brings me to the next part of my story. I was technically forced to fly first class for my surgery to Mexico. Of course, I wasn't forced. I just knew that at this point I would not be able to fit into an economy seat. Prior to flying to Mexico, I basically stopped flying. And after I got over that first flight, after I got through and over the first flight and saw just how awesome it was to get from one point to another super fast, I loved flying. I loved it. That was my preferred mode of travel. And this was, of course, after I'd lost some weight. Like I said, around this time, I was at my heaviest, or my previous heaviest, and then I lost weight over a period of years. And during that time frame, I was still flying, but it got a little easier each time because I was losing weight. And I'd never flown first class. I was comfortable sitting in economy at this point. I fit. So fast forward a few years, for one of my jobs, I had to do a lot of traveling. I traveled extensively, and the job would often will always pay for it. And if they were local trips, meaning like a city or two over, maybe an hour max, hour and a half, we could drive, and they would reimburse us, or we can rent a car or whatever, or take one of the company vehicles, whatever we prefer to do. However, if it was a further trip, like from one coast to another, we would have to fly. And or from the South, which is where I live, to the Midwest, we would have to fly. And so for this particular job, it was okay in the beginning. At this job, I was there for about 3 years. And by this time, like I said, I'm in my window of between 215, 220 to like 240. This is my comfort. I'm comfortable here. This is where I've been all these years. I don't know why I keep quoting, but follow me. So anywho, at this point, I was traveling a lot for this job, and this was actually from 2015 to 2018. This was during the point where I told you I was averaging a 20-pound gain a year. And so at this particular point, I'm gaining so much weight, and now I'm starting to feel like I used to feel, like it was really starting to be uncomfortable flying again. Because now I'm probably like, I've gained the first 20 pounds, so now I'm 260 at this point, flying, not really feeling that great. Then I hit the 280s again, and I think I'm just like, this is getting rough. And then during, this is from the beginning of the year to the end of the year will be a 20-pound gain collectively. But, at one part of the year, I went from like, we'd say 280 to 290. And by the 290s, I was like, okay, this is starting to get rough. And I think the last time I flew, I was around 290 something. I'm not sure of the exact weight. I'll say 291. I don't know. 292, 293. I don't know. I just know that I was so miserable, and I wasn't in first class. I wasn't in economy. I was in business class. I'm not sure if the seats are any bigger, but we do know that the first class seats are much bigger than, economy. So at this point, my job is flying me business class. And the seats still felt just as tight as they did in economy. I'm miserable. And I think I should have asked for a seatbelt extender at this point, because the belts, when I would fasten it, it would leave like an imprint across my stomach, and I could hardly breathe. And I remember my last flight, I almost vomited, not because of turbulence, not because of anything other than the seat belt just being extremely too tight. And I don't know how I fastened that seatbelt. I remember like it was the teeny tiny tip of the seatbelt, but I got it fastened. And I guess in my head I rationalized that, well, if I can get it fastened, I don't need an extender. But it could have been my embarrassment, my shame, my I don't know. But I was just so miserable on that flight, busting over into the other seat, and when I arrived and when I checked into my hotel room and I showered for the night, I saw that I had left, like there was a huge bruise across my stomach. And so at that point, it was just rough because I had to fly back home, So again, I'm still gaining at this point. And we made it back, of course, and then a few months later I had another flight. And this time I didn't fly. My coworkers flew. I didn't. I made an excuse, some lame, stupid excuse too. I really can't remember what the excuse was. But instead of flying, I drove, I want to say 7 or 8 hours from Florida to Tennessee. I believe that's where I went, Tennessee. I drove because I was too fat to fly. I was too fat to fly, and I knew it. So I made up an excuse and I drove there. It took me 2 days to drive because I would get so like tired and my feet would swell up when I tried to drive more than a few hours. So the drive was split up over 2 days, and it sucked because it took my coworkers a couple hours to get somewhere, and it took me a couple days. But I was just too fat, and I knew that I couldn't fit into one of those seats. I knew I couldn't. I didn't want to put myself through that again. And I saw how miserable I was last time, and I gained since then. So there's just no way. There would have definitely been the need for a seatbelt extender. However, I don't even know if I could have fit into the seat. That was more of my apprehension. That's more so why I was afraid. Like, I don't even think I could fit into the seat. Forget the seatbelt extender. I probably can't fit in this seat. So needless to say, at this point, I knew that in order to get to Mexico, I was going to have to fly first class. You know, I was gonna have to fly first class. I had no choice because I couldn't fit into a standard seat. I knew I couldn't fit in economy. Like I said, I don't know if there's a size difference between economy and business class, but I just didn't want to chance it. And even in business class, I was so tight, I knew at that point I probably couldn't fit into that seat. So I had to buy a first class ticket to Mexico, which was dope. It was super dope. That was my first time ever flying first class. I loved it. You know, I love the treatment. I love everything about it, to be honest, except the price. Yeah, that price was, ooh, that price, ooh. Other than that though, I love the experience, but it sucks because it was more so of a forced thing. And also on top of that, you know, I could not enjoy any of the benefits aside from the wider seat, of course, of riding first class, because I couldn't eat, you know, and the food smelled amazing. Like they had these, I forgot what our breakfast was, but it was like some breakfast biscuits and a fruit salad, and I mean, it was just, it was dope. I'm like, ooh, I want some of that, but I couldn't have any, so yeah. But you know, other than that, everything else was cool. However, there comes a point in time to where you just have to make certain changes, and I knew that if I was supposed to continue on living, well, I wasn't living at this point, I was existing, but I knew if I wanted a shot at a life, I had to go and make some sort of changes. And me, I'm the type, I love to travel, so being hindered, as you can see, you probably can tell the difference from my background now. I'm not where I usually film. I'm out of state, but I knew that I had to make some changes, some serious changes and some drastic changes. And that's why, you know, ultimately I had VSG, and a huge part of it, one of the many reasons, is because I had become too fat to travel, too fat to fly, too fat to travel safely and comfortably. So yeah, there's my story. Alright, if you have any questions, definitely drop them down below. If you have or had a similar experience, I would love to hear about it. And what did you do to surpass it? Like, how did you cope? Because me, I kind of personally just became numb for a while. I kind of ignored it, or then I started to make excuses, and then once the excuses stopped working, I knew I had to do something about it. So if you have a similar experience, drop it down below. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe, turn on those notifications, and I will talk to you in the next video. All right, bye y'all.